Good evening. It's time to do a fireside chat again. I've been a little bit amiss, but for this week I've been kind of just trying to catch up, and I apologize for that. It's almost been harder trying to get into a routine again than it was getting everything else done. But I think we're getting back there, and so tomorrow's another day of worship, and I need to make sure I get this done so that I can send you all out the worship bulletin. Although, as we're doing things on Facebook and YouTube, I think we may consider not sending that out in the same way. Not quite sure. A lot of the stuff will be up on the screen now because there are other people who are watching. I don't know for how long, but sometimes we have several hundred people viewing, and so if they're actually participating in worship, they can do so by watching that way. Otherwise, if they tune in, they can, if they just listen to the message, I guess that's important as well. It's interesting doing this thing. I when I'm doing Facebook Live and YouTube Live, I can see when there's people on, and I can see at the end I get a kind of a readout or a whatever that told me that the average watching time for service for all the people who were watching, at least when it's live, the average watch time was about 18 minutes. That's an interesting thought as well. There's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of pieces. My penguin buddy has been standing in the window since the first days here, trying to remind people that we're keeping a watch on things, and he gets to watch the sunset every night and gets to celebrate that as we look out over the cemetery. And a couple of days ago, I took a picture that I just entitled "Truth," which is over the top of the cemetery. Out my window view, this beautiful sunset was there. And the truth is that much bigger than the things we're dealing with again today in this world. And it's just interesting. My hope is, my desire is that hearts are changing, that things are growing, that we would be looking at things starting to be different. I don't know where people are with that. That will be up to all of you who are members of the congregation, and those who knows, possibly might be considering to come and be part of the congregation through this possibility. But that really is, I guess, my point tonight. As we're looking into this new week about to start, the second week of Easter, the week of doubting Thomas, as it were. But the fact that the world as we know it is changing underneath our feet in every way. And every day it really does, but it's changing in leaps and bounds right now. And I think it's important that at least I share that my hope is that it stay changed in many ways. That could be scary for some to hear that or whatever. And again, I don't want it to say what's happening with COVID or anything like that. None of that stuff. But this is the opportunity. This is the time for our congregation, especially, to vision something new. We have been and are, and truly are, a good congregation, a loving congregation, full of people who have hopes. I keep longing for younger people to become engaged, involved, giving, serving, worshiping, practicing people of faith who are growing in a relationship with Jesus Christ. That's the goal. It's not to be a member. Is not the goal. It's to have a relationship with Jesus, and that the body needs to be doing that for each other and with each other and as the body together. But this is a time where the truth is, and people keep asking me, when do I think we'll be able to worship again in large scale? I'm not putting my money on anything earlier than August, if not September, in just truth. And that's not to create fears or anxieties. I just, looking at the history, looking at the news, looking at the way it's taken time for things to get done out, chances are this could be an all-summer deal. And that's okay, because God is still present as he was from the very beginning. It's only when we think that it has to meet our timetable that we forget what God's doing and perhaps trying to show us in the middle of all of this. there's a lot of sadnesses. There's, seniors not going to graduate, and people keep reminding me, back in the 60s, a lot of seniors never got to graduate because they were off in a war. There's all kinds of ways to look at these events and the things of today. But right now, my thought keeps going back to the possibility, the opportunities of this time. To, as we reopen, when those days come into full worship, into things, that we reopen with some things in place that need to be put into place, and things that needed to change a little. And right now is the time for people of the congregation to be helping to make that become visionary and changing. I keep hoping and praying for our board members that they're actually considering in their own trustee roles and other leadership roles, how can we be moving forward? What is God's call for us? What is our mission? What's our direction? And for the people of the congregation to realize that there are things to be learned in the midst of our reflections of these days, and not just fright and fear and worry. There's no question. I'm not worried about money. I'm not worried about surviving the process. I'm not worried about any of those things because none of them are significant. None of them are significant. Today I helped lay to rest Bill Bussing this afternoon, as his life has come to an end with us here in this world. And as I look out tonight and look out over that cemetery, as I do every day, a couple things come to mind. The first is always that when I watch out there, I just always look and think to myself, why do you seek the living among the dead? Easter, he is risen. He's risen indeed. We are people who live and are meant to live this constantly in our life. But also in talking with Jackie and Linda and others related to Bill, just the constant reminder that Bill would always call up or talk to somebody and say, so what's the good news? That's a powerful thought. What is the good news, brothers and sisters? What is the good news these days? It's not just a catchy phrase. It's not just a slogan. Literally, Jesus Christ is the good news. He is the good news of God for us in the middle of difficult days, trying times, in the midst of death and the hope of life. You see, Easter means all that out there has no power. The only thing that has power out there is the sun that's going to go down and the sun that will rise tomorrow. And if it doesn't rise tomorrow, all the better, because it means the end of God's creation as we know it will have come to an end, and he will be Lord of all, and all would be put back to rights. The gift of the day, the gift of this week, this Easter week, is asking the question, how did you spend your Easter? And not that it's over in any way, but how did you spend this week of Easter? How did you help bring a message of life to people? How did you make sure you stopped and shared with somebody the good news that Jesus Christ has risen for them and what that means for you and can mean for them in their life? I still constantly read in the Facebook things as I go through, kind of just keeping an eye on things, and every once in a while I'll put a little snarky humor of my own out there, but just the constant revelations from people that, we're seeing the book of Revelation playing out in front of us, and I don't hold that any more than it happened any other time. When God's book of Revelation plays out, we'll know it. And people ask me, when is God going to end this? Why would God end this? God's in the midst of it. You see, we keep looking for ways to get it done and get it over with and move on. And for those who want to look at those things from that way, I would ask you to say, if you're asking for things to end that way, then the question is, God's answer from Scripture is, I'll end it when you change. When you find out what you've been doing. Don't point the finger at anybody else. Don't point the finger at the society or the world around us. If you're believing that that's the case, then ask what God is asking of you to do. In my textual readings, my Bible study last night as I read laying in bed, I was brought to a reminding of the fact that people in humanity look at things when it comes to spiritual power and when it comes to God showing his power in one of two ways. The first was a image of Naaman, and if you remember the story of Naaman, he was with leprosy, and went to see Elijah, and he asked, what should I do? And he said, well, just go down to the river and dip a couple times. And Naaman got really upset because he wanted big, powerful signs. He wanted big, huge examples of God's power. He wanted someone to come and acknowledge him and his greatness and his power. And yet it was his quiet little servant who said, if he'd given you something hard to do, wouldn't you have done that? So if he gives you something easy to do, like go dip in the river a couple of times, why wouldn't you just go do that? But for some, we're looking for huge spiritual powers. I don't know why. We're looking for these huge miraculous events. We're looking for all these signs of God's power, but we miss what the other story of that devotion was about, which is the story of the centurion who came to Jesus, the one who had a beloved slave who came to Jesus and said, my slave is sick, and I know all you have to do is you just have to say the word, and he'll be healed. And Jesus offered to go with him to his house. He said, no, I'm not worthy. Just say the word. I trust that in a word, you'll make something happen. And that's the kind of person I want to keep encouraging us to be. We'll see big things when they're needed. We'll see big things truly when they're supposed to be seen. And perhaps we'll recognize them as what they're supposed to be seen. Right now, a big thing is happening. The fact is, if you're here listening to this, that's a blessing right there, which is a sign of God's miraculous power that he's kept you well. But even more so is the story of the centurion. The fact that God and God's presence and God's power, he doesn't go around brandishing it. He doesn't come around looking for ways to make you and me happy because we want to see big things. God constantly has witnessed throughout all of Scripture, especially with his Son, that he does things in very quiet, simple ways. God communicates, this devotion says, God communicates and conveys his power and his presence through ordinary means. I remember other devotions that use the word mundane. In the day-to-day life, God shows his power. In the day-to-day moments, in a baby born in a manger, in the elements of water and wine, words spoken through lips of clay, yours and mine. But the word, the good news, that brings the power of God to heal, to bring strength, to bring hope and courage. You know, if this time that we're dealing with right now with the COVID virus takes months, where will your faith be? My hope is it'll be just as strong, if not stronger, because you've come to realize that it is only because of God and only through his strength that we can bear these things together. And together is a key. We look for ways to heal because, yes, we'd love to be together. We'd love to be able to gather. For people who've lost a loved one, like the couple who've already lost them in our congregation, the hard part is they don't get to gather with people. There's nobody there to hold them, and yet the church body hasn't changed. The church body is still here. And the church body needs each part of the body to love it each day. You see. My penguin friend there he's been a staunch reminder for 4 weeks that there's hope standing in the window as he looks out over the cemetery and he watches the sun go down and life passing by. But that penguin, he's only short term. Jesus Christ, the Lord of life, the one who's risen from the grave, the one who paid the price for your sin and mine, the one who proved through God's power that death has no power, is the one that we need to have and watch standing in our windows and in the windows of our hearts. My hope and prayer is that you keep asking the questions, how will we work to be different? How will we not wrestle with things that will be different? Because the world will be different when we come back. There is no doubting it. Technology is changing things because Every church now is connected to the internet. Things are going to change. Things will be different. Will you let those changes in this time be what really you hold on to with your faith? Or will you realize in your thoughts and your comments and your concerns and your wrestlings with God through these days that the greatest of all things that you and I are called to do is to bring Jesus Christ to people, to bear up his name, to witness as the church together what it means to be his body, and to celebrate the gift of Easter hope from now on. He is risen. He is risen indeed. Hallelujah.